Welcome, I'm James Kimber. I'm a physician assistant and founder of Pre-PA Mentor Online, bringing you the best tips and tools to help you get into a PA program. On this channel, we do a lot of strategy videos for pre-PA students who are trying to get into a PA program, as well as interviews with past applicants who have used our service and were successful in getting in, as well as currently practicing PAs, some of which work with our group. So if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and check out the latest information, or if you're interested in certain topics such as mock interviews, other PA programs that we haven't covered already, how to write your personal statement, finding a PA to shadow, just leave us a comment down below and we'll get back to you. Thanks.
Welcome to Physician Assistant Mentor Online.
Welcome back. In today's interview, we're talking to Colleen, and if you haven't guessed it already, she went to the PA program at George Washington University. So we'll go ahead and get right into the interview. Colleen has a wealth of experience in terms of her application process, what she did to make herself a competitive candidate, as well as what it is like to be a practicing physician assistant. So let's get to it. Okay, Colleen, I wanted to welcome you and thank you again for doing this interview with us. If you want to just start off and tell me your name and which school you went to.
Sure. My name is Colleen Espenscheid, and I went to George Washington University.
So, when did you first think about going into healthcare? What prompted that?
So it was about junior high time. My mom got sick and was told over and over again, nothing's wrong with you, nothing's wrong with you. Mm-hmm. But of course, living with her and knowing my mom and seeing her physically ill, it was frustrating. And so I thought to myself, this is something I want to do. I don't want to have anybody ever hear those words like, we don't know what's wrong with you, or it's in your head. So that's kind of when I really started thinking about healthcare. Mm-hmm. That I remember. Although I was told, I've always said I wanted to be a doctor, but that's what I said. I don't remember that.
Okay. And then when you started thinking about medicine, then at some point you discovered the PA field. How did that come about?
So actually, very vividly, I went to student health at UC Irvine. That's where I went to undergrad. And somebody saw me for whatever, I think I had a cold or URI or something. And she wasn't a doctor, but she wasn't a nurse practitioner. And she said what she was, but I didn't quite catch it. So after she saw me, I said, can you tell me more? Do you have time to tell me, what are you? And then she told me about the PA profession and that she was a physician assistant. And I remember going home and, internet was kind of newer at the time, but trying to, kind of do a search online and figure out what it was. And that kind of led me down this road.
So you mentioned that you went to UC Irvine for your undergrad?
Correct.
And how was that experience?
It was a good experience. I went there because I had a strong bio program. I knew that I wanted to do medicine. At first, I thought I wanted to go to medical school because I didn't really know that there was a PA program or a physician assistant career. And so it was good. It was competitive and challenging, but I enjoyed my time. I'm glad I went there for my major.
Okay. A lot of students, when they're doing their undergrad work, they find that they're not able to complete all the prereqs for PA. Were you able to do that at UCLA?
Everything except for anatomy. We did not have a specific anatomy class. Of course, there was physiology, but we didn't have anatomy. So I did have to go to a community college just to complete that.
Were there any particular courses of your science courses that you had problems with, that you found to be more difficult?
More of the physical sciences like physics, chemistry, and OChem, those were the most challenging for me. The biology classes were fine and I enjoyed them, but those were the most challenging.
Did you have to take the GRE?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
And how did you prepare for that?
I did a prep course.
Okay.
And just did, what the prep course told me to do and took it. So did fine.
Good, obviously.
Yeah.
Another problem a lot of students have these days is finding someone to shadow. Were you able to find PAs to shadow?
I did. Now this was, I was just trying to think about how long it was. So if I've been at PA, I entered in 2001. So I mean, really, it's been 19 years with the application process and even 20, starting. So that was a long time ago, and we didn't have all the access that we had today. I don't remember how I found out there was a PA, what they called a PA helper program at County USC.
Okay.
And
yes.
I lived in LA at the time. I grew up there, and I got in touch with the program, and that's how it was strictly a shadow program in the ER there, in the old ER before they
Okay.
had the new hospital.
Applying to a PA program, what did you feel were your strengths?
My GPA, my grade work, my degree, and the fact that I had shadowed, and I also did get a job as a medical assistant.
Okay.
To get my clinical hours.
Okay.
So I feel, and I did a lot of extracurricular things outside of medicine as well. I also was an intern in DC, kind of, so I was pretty strong on paper because I also have a lot of other interests.
As a medical assistant, getting your clinical experience or your clinical hours, do you feel that helped you in terms of PA?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I definitely helped with just watching the doctor, how he, dealt with the patients, his empathy, his compassion, but he also knew that I was wanting to go to PA school. And he had a medical assistant who actually was a friend of mine, who wanted to go to PA school. So he really taught. It wasn't, he liked to teach. So he would always say, okay, what do you see on the x-ray? Because it was for an orthopod or an orthopedic surgeon. So it was so much more interesting than just a medical assistant job.
Right.
I got to go into the OR with him and things like that. So I learned so much.
When you applied, how many programs did you apply to?
I applied to 12.
Okay. And how did you go about choosing those?
So for me, my criteria at the time, because not every program had a master's degree, is I wanted to get a master's degree since I'd already have my bachelor's. And something that was really important to me at the time was actually going to a program that had a medical school associated. And I don't know if it was a pride thing or just thinking I'd get the better education if there was a medical school associated with it, or
Right.
just being, but those were kind of my criteria. Not every school that I applied to had a medical program with it, but pretty much most of them did. So, and also a program that had been around a long time that, knew what it took or was a good program, a well-known program. Those are kind of some of the things that I looked for.
And of those programs, how many did you get an interview with?
I think I got interviews at all the schools. No, what except Duke. I did not get an interview at
Okay.
Duke. So 11.
And then through the interview process, how many contacted you afterwards in terms of either waitlist or accepting?
So I was thinking about this last night because I didn't go interview at all the schools because that get expensive.
Yes.
But so I think I interviewed at 10, I got into 8, and I got waitlisted at 2.
Oh, congrats.
So
And so for all the programs that you were given acceptance, why did you pick George Washington?
because it kind of fit the criteria that I had wanted. Again, I guess, I don't know if it was a pride thing at the time. It was the number 2 program in the country. I had also done a internship in DC, and I really loved the city.
Yeah.
I was really ready to leave California, doing undergrad. So it was just a really great choice for me and what I was looking for.
So going back to when you started the PA program, how do you think you felt like your first day? I mean, nervous, ready, excited?
All the above.
Right.
I mean, how can you not, right?
Sure.
You're excited. You're starting this program where you've worked so hard to get into. It's kind of, your path. Like, okay, you're really getting into medicine, as opposed to biology or whatever you're studying. And then you're meeting all these new people. You don't know anybody. So all the above. Having that time, honestly, I can say for my 20s, being in PA school those 2 years were actually probably the best 2 years of my life in my 20s. It was great.
Okay.
I would totally do it again.
So you graduated, obviously, and then what was your first job, or what did did you go
So
into?
I actually went through a postgraduate residency program for PAs. So I realized going through my rotations that I really enjoyed women's health and obstetrics and gynecology. And so I wanted more of that, especially obstetrics. I really loved being on labor and delivery, which is not something I expected at all. I thought I wanted to do pediatrics. And so, so I decided I wanted to, learn more and get more intensive training and education. And so I looked to see if there was any residency programs, and there was only 2, I think. And so I applied to one because one of them actually said they were not going to continue their residency program for when I would have been able to get in. So I applied and got in and did that for a year.
And then have you been in that field since, or have you?
Predominantly, yes.
Okay.
I have worked in general surgery and a little bit of primary care and interventional radiology, but for the most of my career has been women's health.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of the applicants that we deal with, a lot of people talk about the flexibility of being a PA. How would you explain that?
Well, I mean, you have the flexibility of going in and out of different specialties. You don't necessarily have to stick to one. However, the longer you are in a specialty, it can be a little challenging to move into a newer one. Depending on where you're at in life too. I have 3 kids, so for me, I would prefer to stay in women's health now because it's what I know best. It's what I do well, and to get into a newer specialty maybe later down the line. But I mean, it is great to have that flexibility, because sometimes you can get bored and want a challenge.
Okay.
So.
Were there any particular reasons that led to you going from one specialty to another?
Well, yes, kind of basically job availability.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. When I moved to San Diego, there was not a lot of women's health at the time. So, that was basically it.
Back when you applied, and sorry not to date anything, but
Okay. I already said my age.
was CASPA available at that time?
No, not at that time. So
Okay. Same.
It was real fun getting the paper applications and putting them in the typewriter.
Right.
12 different applications in the typewriter. 12 different essays.
You've been working as a PA for a long time, and you've worked with other students that are pursuing this, have probably talked to you. What advice do you have for people now who are trying to pursue this career?
I would say really get in with shadowing a PA, really try to understand the role of what a physician assistant is and how we function in the medical world, in the medical team. I know teamwork is a big deal and we are part of the greater team, but you do work pretty autonomously as well. And so just really have that understanding. Also have the understanding that, there are things that are going to be out of your scope, and that's okay. And that you have a supervising physician for a reason. That is a rewarding profession as well. I think those are kind of the biggest things to, to note. Because being a PA, the programs really want you to know that you understand what the role is.
How about your letters of recommendation? Who did those for you?
Oh gosh, okay. So I think I had 2 of the PAs that I shadowed. They wrote letters of recommendation for me. The physician I worked for as a medical assistant. And I had a biology professor write one for me as well.
How long would you say you'd known those people for?
At least a year,
Okay.
if not 2 years.
So CASPA typically opens in April. And how far ahead do you think a student should start planning in terms of, getting the hours that they need and getting the right references?
Oh, at least a year, if not more.
Right.
I mean, I started planning before I graduated, and then I ended up taking 2 years off because I did 5 years of school. So I kind of had a lot of planning already done, and then once I was ready to it took me a year and a half kind of
Okay.
once I made that decision, yes, that this is what I'm doing. So if not more. So yes, it's not a fly by your pants kind of thing.
We were talking earlier about the interviews for the PA programs, and you were mentioning that maybe doing some work ahead of time would probably be helpful as well for some of these students. So like mock interviews.
Definitely. Oh, that definitely would have been. I had kind of a similar situation where I had some mock interview, but I don't think the resources were there to fully prepare me. I think than we have now, and so to definitely kind of have that thought process of the type of questions that they ask, even though you don't have the exact questions, but just to kind of walk through that a couple of different times would be so invaluable for the students for sure.
Well, again, thank you for doing this. I appreciate your time and again, all the information that you provided, and look forward to you working with us.
Of course, thank you for having me. I'd love to help out and pay it forward, so thank you.